Recording live from the Lucky Number 7 Lounge in the basement of Dine Drink Travel World Headquarters in the barren wastelands of far west Texas, this is Dine Drink Vegas, the podcast by and for everybody stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions, and we will not be stuck home much longer. But first, we've got to record episode number 24, the Spherical Armadillo. We're going to bring you some Vegas news, the drink of the day, and our featured topic about our favorite airlines to get us to Sin City. But before we do any of that, I've got to introduce the king of comps, the leader in the luxury lounge, the high roller of the high plains. Of course, I mean the founder of Dine Drink Travel himself, Bill. Good afternoon, Bill.
Good afternoon, John. How the heck are you?
I am doing really good in spite of how dirty you did me on our drink of the day.
You're the one who came up with the recipe. I simply recommended alternatives to you.
So we are drinking a Between the Sheets, which is a twist on a sidecar. According to liquor.com, this particular drink goes all the way back to Harry's New York bar in Paris, France. So about as far from Vegas as you can go. But it's Vegas adjacent because in Vegas there is a fake Paris and a fake New York. So what the heck?
I will actually be eating at the fake Paris 2 days from now.
Yes, and that will be wonderful, wonderful. I don't know that I'm going to make it to Paris this trip, but we shall see. For this drink, what you need, and we'll talk about our variations, but I'm going to go through the recipe first. It calls for, and this is, by the way, all of these are a variation on the sour, and you'll see why pretty quickly. An ounce of cognac or the brandy of your choice, an ounce of, it says light rum, you can go with a slightly aged rum, an ounce of triple sec, and a quarter ounce of freshly squeezed lemon juice. You shake all of that up, strain it out, put it into a coupe or a cocktail glass or just a rocks glass because we didn't feel like doing dishes. And then you can garnish with a flamed or unflamed orange peel. Now, Bill, why don't you tell us about the Cadillac version of this drink you're drinking before we get to my Ford Pinto over here?
So, I don't actually have... I've got a couple of cognacs at the house, but they're really high-end cognacs. And I've got some brandies, but they're really cheap. And I'm the leader in the luxury lounge, right? Like, I can't have that cheap of a thing. So what I went with instead of a cognac was an Armagnac, which our local liquor store sells. It's really good. It's at a reasonable price. So I went with an Armagnac. For the rum, I use 7-year-old Florida Cognac because that's the cheapest rum I keep in the house, right? And I need to start doing a better job of keeping light rums for mixed drinks like this, but I went with that.
Although I would argue that at that price point, that's a perfectly justifiable sub because it's not super aged, and it says 7, but it's not pure 7-year. I think if you're happy with that as a light rum, I think you're okay not to carry a silver rum.
Yeah, no, that's my base mixing rum anyway. And then I went with just whatever De Kuyper's triple sec. I like my drink. It is very good. I'm glad I put in the flamed orange peel. I will say, and I guess you've got to do this to make it a sour, but I'm not enjoying the undertones of the lemon juice as much, right? Like, I think if I had made the same drink without the lemon juice, or maybe had put in just a dashlet of orange juice instead, the lemon to me is clashing with the rest of the drink just a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that. I think at that point you're into a riff on an old fashioned anyway. So instead of triple sec, I went with, I can't remember the brand, but it's a tequila and orange base thing, which the reason I did that is because you suggested that the brandy I use would be a Mexican brandy called Presidente. Now, listeners...
No, I didn't suggest you used it. I pointed out that you grew up here in the barren wastelands of far western Texas and had almost certainly had it before. And then you were like, yes, yes, must have it.
No, I did not say yes, yes, must have it. I said the crap we do for this podcast. Listeners, if you have never had Presidente brandy, it is bad brandy.
It's god-awful.
There are a lot of lovely distilled products from Mexico. And yet, here's the thing with Presidente brandy. It occupies a nostalgic place in my heart. And in certain situations, such as adding a half ounce of it to a margarita, it is weirdly endearing. In this case, when I made the drink per the recipe, ounce of the brandy, ounce of the rum, and I use the same rum as you, ounce of an orange liqueur, and then my lemon juice, there is a funk to Presidente brandy that was just off-putting. However, Even though the recipe does not call for bitters, I put in a good heavy shake of bitters after I tasted this monstrosity and stirred that in. And actually now, even though what I have is no longer between the sheets, I don't know what you call it. I don't want to know what you call it. But with some bitters, this is actually very, very, very enjoyable. So I guess that's my takeaway is if you find yourself in the situation of using Mexican brandy, Presidente in particular, don't be afraid of it, but it needs something.
Do you know why I have that Presidente brandy in my closet, John? It's so that the next time I get dental work, I've got something to numb the pain that doesn't cost me a lot of money. That is why that Presidente lives in Dine, Drink, Travel World headquarters.
I would just say you have other options for that. But actually, I'm actually very happy with what I'm drinking. Making it per the recipe without bitters, no. If you're going to use, and I'll just say this, if you're going to use a cheap brandy that either does not have a flavor that you love or lacks a depth of flavor at all, a lot of American brandies are inoffensive, but they're very plain. So if you're going with E&J, even though the recipe doesn't call for bitters, I think a good dash of Angostura saves the day because I've taken something that was not palatable when it came out of the cocktail shaker to something in my glass with the Angostura that is actually quite fine. Yeah, I'm happy with this now. So we're going to get to the title in a little bit and explain why we're talking about the Spherical Armadillo. But before that, we're going to get to our feature story because you and I both have trips to Vegas. I leave as we record this. It is Saturday afternoon on March the 9th. I fly out tomorrow. You fly out Monday. And let's talk about our airline preferences. Now, to be clear, what we're about to say may not be true, dear listener, depending on the airport you fly out of and what that looks like for you. But given where we are in Western Texas with an airport that is technically rated as an international airport, but it's got 4 gates. Not exactly.
We've got 6, don't we? Theoretically?
Theoretically, but there's 4 that they actually use.
Okay.
We're flying out of basically a small regional airport that technically is an international airport, and on rare occasion will have a direct flight to Cancun or Mexico City, but for all intents and purposes is regional. So your experience may differ, dear listener, but Bill and I, not surprisingly, have a different take on our preferred airline out of the wastelands of West Texas to the beautiful wastelands of Nevada or however you want to say that state. Bill, why don't you talk to us about your preferred ride out of here?
So my preferred ride out of here is American, and it is so we've got 3 choices, right? We can use American, we can use Southwest, or we can use United. And part of it, most of why I like American better comes down to what happens in the Vegas airport. There's no airline that has a well-organized boarding process at the Vegas airport, and I've flown all 3 airlines home from Vegas, but the American airline gates tend to be a little bit less crowded. Now, that doesn't mean that they're a pleasant experience, right? It just means that they are less crowded than the United and the Southwest gates, and the Southwest gates I've always just found to be a horribly cramped experience in Vegas for the boarding process.
Yes, yeah, I'll concede that point.
Yeah. I guess the second reason I usually pick American, I'm going with American this time, is there are better restaurants and lounges in which to wait. Like, there's not even really a lot of bars in that place where the Southwest flights take off from. And the options aren't great where American takes off from, but there's at least a couple of choices. The American gates are right by the American Express Centurion Lounge, which gives you some choices. They're also a reasonable walk from the Priority Pass Lounge. So there are a couple places that you can wait. And then there are 2 other things. One, when I go to Vegas, right, like we make fun of me being the leader in the luxury lounge, and sure, up to a point that's true, but that's partially because of what I want Vegas to be. I want it to feel like a premium travel experience. And to me, to feel like a premium travel experience, I want to fly there in first class whenever I can. And American gives me that option, and Southwest doesn't. But then there's the last thing. The miles I get on American are actually much more useful than the miles I get on United. Like, I can trade them in for flights and for upgrades I want. And unlike Southwest, so that makes them better than United. But unlike Southwest, they get me places I want to go. So on episode 23, We talked about my kid going on a college tour in Ireland. Turns out he's actually going to go to school in Ireland for the next 4 years. My American miles can help get me there. They can help get me other places I want to go. So on balance, I find American I find American to be a better deal. There is one point in favor of Southwest, and I see it here on the run sheet you're about to bring up. But why don't you talk to us for a second, John, about why you like Southwest?
So obviously, as the baller on a budget, price is the biggest deal. Now, price cannot be the only determiner, because I got to tell you, there are some other airlines that are even cheaper than Southwest. Based on the stories I hear from people, if they were an option out of our airport, I would not pick it, because there's got to be some sentiment of baller left in the baller on a budget. And Southwest is a good deal. It is not always the cheapest deal, but it is a consistently fair price for a consistently decent service. So I'm gonna say that. Now, that's not to say that sometimes economy on American isn't cheaper, because that can happen. But on average, Southwest tends to be our best deal out of this airport.
Although I hadn't noticed that as much. Now, part of that's because I'm not usually looking for economy class tickets. But when I have, whatever, I've absolutely seen that go both ways.
And it absolutely can. But then you got to think about what you're paying for, because I would argue that the Southwest experience overall beats the economy experience on American. So even if you get the same price point, or even if American's $5, $10 cheaper, the other thing you got to think about too is baggage and all of that. Southwest is way less hassle. But the other big deal to me is the direct flight. So for us,
and for a lot of cities,
for us, it is a direct flight on Southwest to Vegas. It is rare that American or United offer that. Not never, but normally you're going to go to Dallas or Houston or Denver or Phoenix and cool your heels for an hour or two, or worse, run from gate to gate to make a tight connection. Whereas Southwest, I get on the plane, and when I get off the plane in Vegas with no stops in between, through the magic of time change, I actually walk off the plane about 5 minutes after I got on, even though it's a 2 hour and 5 minute flight. So I really love that direct flight thing, because that really does matter to me when what I want. And I hear you don't want to take the Greyhound of the skies to get to your luxury experience, except that if it gets me there quickly with no fuss, no muss, yeah, not so bad, because time is money too, And then finally, I happen to have the Southwest credit card through Chase, and I don't have a child going to an international city for college. I do have a child going to college a whole whopping 18 miles away from my front door next year. So, Southwest, the main place I want to fly is Vegas, and the Southwest credit cards and reward system, I very often get cheaper free flights to Vegas thanks to my credit card and the miles program. So for me, it's the better deal.
And I get that. And part of it, and listeners, if you're going to fly very much, figure out the credit card architecture of whatever airline you're going to fly, because that's one of the reasons that I fly American. I've actually got executive platinum status. They're top frequent flyer status, because almost every dollar I spend, I route through one of their credit cards. And that means that I'm unlikely to do things like fly in economy class.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it just boils down to, like, I could see the scenario where if my wife and I were flying to a greater variety of destinations, that I would make the decision you're making. So I'm not arguing that your airline choice is wrong. I'm just saying that for my particular circumstances, that most of the time when I fly, I'm flying to Southwest, or occasionally for work-related things, I'm flying to Austin, I'm flying to Dallas. Turns out Southwest gets to all those places quickly, cheaply, and efficiently, and that's all I really need, because I'm not taking long flights. I'm not taking international flights.
No, that is all totally fair. And, if you get a high enough boarding position, you can get a window seat on Southwest, so maybe you can see the Spherical Armadillo. Speaking of, John.
So renderings dropped. So we're moving into Vegas news. And one of the big news pieces of the last week is that renderings have dropped showing the Stadium Design 2.0. So remember, they showed us that retractable roof design. A few months ago, we covered it on the podcast. Well, you cannot squeeze that into 9 acres. We all knew it at the time. And so something that looks a lot like they were cribbing notes from the Sydney Opera House has emerged. And their designer, and I may get his name wrong, Bajarke, I don't know. Bajarke Ingles, who is the designer whose firm is handling this, said that he was inspired by desert creatures and wanted the design to look like, and I quote, a spherical armadillo.
I'm pretty sure he was inspired by something from the desert, but I'm thinking more plant than animal.
I'm thinking about those roly-poly bugs that roll up into a shell here in the hinterlands of West Texas that we all played with as kids.
We did, and it makes me sad we can't see those as much anymore, but whatever.
Probably because of the horrible things we did to those bugs as kids.
No, they are still traumatized, even though it's like 40 generations later. So I'm worried about whether or not this stadium design is actually going to happen, because on some of the earlier renderings, they still don't show stuff like space for air conditioners. And to me, and I'm sure there's something I'm missing, but it's partially open to the outside so that you can see the strip. Great, right? Like that makes a whole lot of sense to me. But that means it's going to be one of two things. Either it's going to be impossible to keep cool, or else you're going to have some glass in there so you can keep it cool and still see out.
Right.
But dang, that's going to cause some heat and some ugly, ugly glares inside the stadium. Like I don't see how this works.
So it's enclosed, and there is glass. It is facing away from the setting sun to reduce glare, so you don't get the situation you get in the Cowboy Stadium, where if they open on that one end zone, you blind your own offense. Which, good job, Jerry. On that, but yeah, they claim that they've got that part all figured out. And I've been reading a few different blogs and news stories, and most of the people that have looked at this, they're not raising those concerns as much. The concern is still the A's don't have the money.
So John Fisher is talking about selling an equity stake in the A's to raise the money.
Yeah. So yeah, that good luck with that.
I can think of other assets that have greater value that I might prefer to own. Here's the other problem. If you're selling an equity stake, but you're still either going to retain a majority stake or an effective control stake, that doesn't give your minority owners a whole lot of incentive to go participate in the deal. So it's, yay, it feels like progress. I want it to happen, partially because it makes summers in Vegas fun, and partially because the A's AA team is here, right? So we've got a connection. But yeah, I've still got questions.
Yeah, I do too. And I will point out that this rendering still does not show what Bally's Corp might be able to build on the rest of the property in terms of a new Tropicana, or since the Bally's Casino, which wasn't owned by Bally's, which was owned by Caesars, has now been rebranded the Horseshoe. Whether we're going to get a Bally's branded casino, a new Tropicana, I don't know. But there's also no word on what that might look like and whether or not Bally's has the money to do that either. So there's a whole lot of this that's up in the air. We do know that the Wrecking Ball is coming, that the Trop closes in April. So something's going to be on that corner. Remains to be seen whether the A's and Bally's Corp have either of their acts together to pull that off. Well, let's move into a renovation that has indeed happened. So several outfits have covered this, but I'm going to highlight Jacob Oreth, Jacob's Life in Vegas, because he's been all over this. So the Slots of Fun at Circus, which was pretty well run down and in a sad state, long neglected and abandoned food and dining venues, nobody in there gaming, all of that, worn out carpet, the whole 9 yards. By the way, Vital Vegas says they're going to keep the carpet design, so they'll get a carpet refresh, but it'll look the same, which the pictures of that carpet are pretty lit, to be honest. But Slots of Fun is now open. They've got brand new slot machines. They've got the vintage coin operated machines. They brought in some table games. They've got functional real life bars. And apparently they're bringing in some interesting food options in there. So they're trying to give an affordable, fun place to gamble, to walk in off the street if you happen to be on the north end of the strip. Bill, I know you don't ever want to stay at Circus. Would you at least walk through Slots of Fun and play a few games?
So, and we'll talk about this on our trip previews for the trips you and I are making next week. I could... Actually, no, it's not going to be open. Wait, that is open.
Yeah, it's
now,
open.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's open.
So I may walk through it when I'm staying at the Fontainebleau next week. Probably not, but I'll think about it, partially because, and here's the part of that I like the most, is the coin-operated slots, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a cool to that. If my mama was still alive, she would love that. I would kind of enjoy doing it, right? You just put in a quarter at a time and do your thing. So it's maybe, and I think the part of that I like the most is the coin-operated slots.
I think you ought to take a roll of quarters and just swing on by. I mean, I think that'd be a good thing to do. I don't think I'm going to get down to that end of the trip with my trip, even though we're going to be in town at the same time. I'm sure we'll run into each other. It's technically two different trips. I don't think I'll get in there this trip, but boy, if I was going to spend a night where you're going to spend one night, I would take a roll of quarters, but we'll get to that in a minute.
So what other things might be going on construction-wise in Vegas?
So rumors are still flying, and this has been going on, and I think we mentioned it in passing the other week. And look, I'm a little hesitant to get into rumors, but let's be real. We're not a legit news source, right? We're just two fat guys in West Texas talking about Vegas. So what the heck?
No, we are a legit source of health and beauty.
All right. Anyway, so we do come up with some interesting drink content. So we do that. We offer that to the world. So rumors are still flying all over the internet that TI might be up for sale, even though they're the ones that just bought Circus and are remodeling it. And the specific rumors have the Seminoles as a potential buyer, with the idea being, instead of tearing down everybody's beloved volcano, the volcano stays, TI goes, and the guitar tower goes where TI stands, and the Seminole get one big mega resort property out of the deal. So there's no confirmation of this. There's no official word yet, although some of the more reliable Vegas people out there are willing to engage in the speculation, but right now it's nothing more than that. Bill, I know that you have a soft spot for the TI. How do you feel about this?
So I feel two different ways. One, I do love the TI, right? Like that is... For one thing, the TI has absolutely the best gambling odds on the strip. Okay, the best gambling odds of a place I'm willing to walk into. I suppose that, like, theoretically, Casino Royale may have something better, but TI has great gambling odds. They've got phenomenal deals on good suites. So I like TI, and I kind of don't want to see something which might tear down the existing TI. But then again, TI and Mirage were originally built to be partner hotels anyway. That's why there's still a tram between the two, which kind of sort of operates some of the time. So it makes sense to me that the two would be linked. I kind of like the old pirate theme of the TI. So I do hope that one ownership group, whether it's the Seminoles or whoever, winds up owning both properties. I don't know. I've got such a soft spot for the TI. I don't want to see it change.
Yeah, I get that too. Like, I've never stayed at TI. I quite enjoy hanging out at TI. Listen, I will gladly, like, one of my favorite memories in Vegas was hanging out at Gillies. You and Mike were playing blackjack. I'm not a big table games player. I walked into Gillies. I pounded a couple of $1.50 Lone Star beers, and some woman old enough to be my mother from Minnesota asked me if I was from Texas because she needed to learn how to two-step. And that I'm a bad dancer, but she thinks she could two-step now because she got a really terrible dance lesson from me. And I made a grandmother very happy while y'all went and played cards. It was a lot of fun. My wife laughed at the story. Like, I've got a soft spot for that property. Now, that casino feels like the gaming room of a Flying J truck stop some days. But I mean that lovingly. I don't mean that.
With really good blackjack odds.
Yeah. But it kind of has that vibe if you've ever been in, anyway. I like TI. It would be a shame to see it go. But the thing about Vegas is nothing stays forever. So if this is the end for TI, if this is the end is for Mirage as we know it, I'm kind of torn. I would hate it if the idea was the volcano is still going to go, TI is going to go, everything's going to go, and we get all new. I think if you can keep the volcano,
maybe.
All
right, cool.
Yeah.
Well,
all right, next two stories I think you added to the rundown, so I'm going to let you take lead.
So going back to the airport, which is we started this episode with, the Transportation Security Administration, our good friends at TSA, have started self-service screening in Terminal 3. They started at March 6th, so 3 days ago. It is the first in the nation. It is notionally an experiment which is going to run for 6 months. Now, Terminal 3 is, I think that's where the international airlines tend to go, which means most domestic travelers won't have the chance to do this just yet. I think it's a fascinating experiment. I'm curious to see how well it works. I'm curious to see how many technical glitches there are going to be. So I've got TSA PreCheck. The thing that I don't like about this is there's much more of the body scanning technology, much less of just the metal detectors. And I can't tell you the number of times I've gone through body scanners and had kind of gross pat downs. So I don't know. I don't like it, particularly unless maybe the technology just works better than all the previous scanners have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm dubious about the value of a lot of the things we do. There's always the critique of security theater, and I worry that's what a lot of this is. Although I do like the TSA's trying to keep us safe, and I want peace of mind when I fly. At this point, if it gets us on the planes faster and we're still as safe as we are today.
So they're not actually expecting it to make things faster. The stated purpose is to improve the passenger travel experience. And maybe that's what winds up happening. I guess I want to see it in operation, right? And I want to see the number of times they're a false positive stop on somebody, because if that actually results in more pat downs or more delays because you've got to spend more time figuring out the technology or whatever, then it's actually a worse passenger experience. Now, maybe it works. I guess I want to see it in actual operation.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So what else you got?
The one other news story, and I know we report on this at least every other episode, but that's because it is absolutely central to understanding the town that is Las Vegas. Lake Mead levels are now at a 3-year high, and maybe another couple of months that they keep increasing. So the main source of water in Lake Mead isn't rainfall, it's snow melt. And as we get into spring and snow starts to melt, that will increase. Now, those lake levels are certainly going to go down as we go over the summer. And Lake Mead being at a 3-year high, 3 years ago, it was at what was then a historic low. So this isn't go turn on the taps and do whatever you want. You still have to absolutely conserve water in Vegas. But what this means is that the city of Las Vegas has several more years than they had before, particularly when combined with the fact that Arizona and California are starting to talk about conserving Colorado River water. The upper basin states are starting to talk about it. Las Vegas has several extra year lease on life because they've got water in the lake, and that is just phenomenally good news for any of us who love the city of Las Vegas.
Yeah, and I think the chance that, we talked about a couple episodes ago that all the rain in California means demands on the lake are going to go down. The snowpack, we're down to the last few weeks, but there's a chance the snowpack at least hits its annual average. So you've got a chance that the drawdown on the lake over the summer will be minimal. A lot of the people who rely on the lake have gotten really good at water restrictions in the last few years. There's going to be some snow coming in. We could still have a wet spring. We could still have a wet summer. Californians have been inundated with water, so they're not going to draw as much. So yeah, I think that's good news. And I know for some listeners who may come from places where water is abundant, this seems like an abstract issue. For people who grow up in water scarce regions, and West Texas, as bad as it is, we're in less dire straits for water than the state of Nevada.
Mostly just because there's fewer people.
Yeah, there's fewer people and there's slightly more water. We get probably 3 inches of rain more than that region, and we've got in our entire metro area of our 2 big cities and the surrounding areas, we have maybe pushing it a fourth of the people that Vegas has as residents. And we don't do 30, 40 million tourists a year either, because nobody's trying to come here for fun. We're all trying to get out of here for fun. So, our demands on our water supply are not nearly as taxing, but even here, look, when some of the reservoirs that maybe we fished at as a kid or used to be a water source are completely bone dry out here, it makes you think. So this is a big deal.
It absolutely is. So should we talk about the trips we're making this week, John?
Yes, let's. And this is going to be a very short episode. The last couple have been longer. This one's going to be slightly on the shorter side. You might get a bonus episode if we get a chance to connect and record an episode while we're in Vegas, but all bets are off because, we know how things happen in Vegas, and you don't always do the things you plan to do because you got distracted by shiny objects or happy hours or the like. But Bill, let's start with your trip, which begins on Tuesday.
No, I'm leaving Monday and coming back Thursday, so it's the same length of time as your trip, but we each overlap for 2 of the 3 days. So I decided to go for the Dine Drink Vegas YouTube channel, and I'm also going to get a little bit of content for the Dine Drink Travel YouTube channel, but mostly I was there for the YouTube channel, so I split it up into 2 different hotels. I'm spending 2 nights at the Flamingo because Caesars keeps sending me offers for free rooms, and I can't figure out why because I've never really gambled there, but I'm like, all right. So I've got a free room for a couple of nights at the Flamingo, and then I have got to check out the Fontainebleau. So, and I mean, that's at a full price, but it's also at full price for a Wednesday in the middle of March. So I'm going to go check out those 2 hotels for 1 or 2 nights. My buddy Ryan is going to join me. He's going to stay down at the Signature by MGM Grand. So I'll get video footage of all of those places for the YouTube channel. I'm sure on future podcasts, we're going to do an episode on the Flamingo, an episode on the Fontainebleau, and an episode on where you stay. And being me, I am mostly going to eat at steakhouses. So Monday night, we are eating at the Paris at Mon Ami Gabi because they've got a $39 steak frite that is just a phenomenal deal, and I want to go check that out. Emmett Smith, number 22 of Dallas Cowboys fame, has a new steakhouse in the Fashion Show Mall. I'm going to go check it out on Tuesday. I've got reservations there. And also my favorite cigar bar in Vegas is a little spot right in front of the Fashion Show Mall, so that'll be good. On Wednesday, I don't have reservations, and I'm not going to make them. I'm going to eat something inside the Fontainebleau. The problem is their steakhouses, they've got 2, which is weird, and they both look fantastic, but they're both super expensive. Most of the options are super expensive, and all of the reservations are wide open. So, you know what? I'm taking a gamble that I'm going to be able to just walk in somewhere, and that night I'm going to be by myself. I'm taking a gamble I'm going to be able to walk in and sit at the bar, and honestly, it's just going to depend on which place my wallet hates less. And also, I mean, get a sense of the vibe. But I do have one question. Do we have time for me to ask you one question, Sean?
Of course, there's plenty of time.
So right now I've got a regular room at both hotels. And the Flamingo has sent me a couple of offers to upgrade to a suite. But I don't want to do that because it's a literally infinite increase over the free room that I've got right now. But the Fontainebleau, I'm thinking about it. I'm disinclined to do it because if the upgrade clears, it's going to cost a couple $100, and I'm there by myself. I don't need the space. I'm not entertaining anybody. There's nothing there, but it's as cheap as a suite at the Fontainebleau is ever going to be, right? So if I'm going to see it, this would be the time. So what do you think? Do I upgrade to the suite, or do I save those couple $100 and spend them somewhere else?
I mean, I think if you're already worried about what your wallet hates less and you don't have anybody to entertain, I think I would probably spend that money on dining, gambling, or other forms of entertainment. I made a different decision, and we'll get to my trip in a minute, but in your circumstances, I think...
Well, it's already such a nice hotel.
Yeah,
right?
And I think at that point, there's other things to spend that money on.
Yeah, no, and I don't know, I'm eating at 3 steakhouses. That's going to be a good bill. And frankly, that's money I want to spend, right? Like it's the steakhouses.
Right.
I'll think about it, but I'm inclined to say no. So how about you, John? Where are you staying? And talk about, if you would, there's one point where your buddies and me and my buddies are planning to try to overlap depending on how our bartenders treat us. What's the story with your trip?
So I am booked at the Link for all 3 nights, as are my 2 friends that are going out there with me. This is a getaway and relax trip for the 2 of them. They are not high rolling types. They are not fancy food types. So our big meal, the one that you might join us on, is going to be brunch at the Bacchanal.
Yes, please.
Because neither of these guys has ever done a Vegas buffet. And we've had this debate over which is the better buffet. I don't think there's a more quintessentially Vegas buffet than the Bacchanal. I mean, there's just something about Caesars. It's got more mystique. Absolutely, Wynn is luxurious, and you can argue that their food may be a little bit better, different variety. But I think if you're going to go to one Vegas buffet, and that's the only one you're ever going to do, and you want to have a Vegas feeling experience, I think the Bacchanal is the way to go. So that's what we're doing. We're going to head over to Hofbrauer House. You just dropped a video. And by the way, I rarely critique your videos on YouTube because I think you make better videos than I do. I would have been okay if you'd included the paddling footage.
We broke one of our friends.
Not his. You could have put mine, though.
I thought about it, but I realize this is going to sound weird to both of us, so I'm going to say it once and then we'll pretend it never happened. I decided to show a modicum of human respect for you, John.
I get that, but I think the video really needed... Folks, if you've never been to Hofbrauer House, just go in and order a shot
Buy
of
your friend a
Jaeger.
shot.
Yeah.
Do it.
Buy yourself
It's
one.
good.
And when the angry German-speaking woman comes over with the paddle, just roll with it.
Yeah, no, it is all good.
Look, outside of Clark County, people pay a lot of money for that experience. That's all I'm going to say.
So what else do you have on your trip, John?
So the other dining thing is we're toying around making a trip to Flavortown. I make fun of Guy Fieri's restaurants, but the truth of the matter is, like, Guy Fieri's a little bit ridiculous. If I had hair, I would not frost tip it like that. But you know what? The guy runs runs a lot of successful restaurants. His TV shows are wildly popular. He apparently gives a lot of money to charity and does a lot of nice things. And you and I have eaten at his dining venues at sea, and they weren't bad. So I don't know why it's so popular to hate on Guy Fieri, but I think we may drop in and have a meal in Flavortown.
I would love to hear how that is, right? Like if I was nearby, I'd actually do that, mostly based on the cruise ship experience. But yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. So I think he's got a couple of venues in Caesars properties, including his big Vegas restaurant. I can't remember the name of it right there at the link. For gaming purposes, I think we're going to walk over to Stage Door in Ellis Island. None of us are high rollers. So someplace that has lower minimums and better odds to make our relatively small bankrolls last longer. Mostly what I want to do is play video poker and at least have the sort of play where if I don't win money, that at least my losses are smaller than my bar tab would have been if I wasn't getting comp drinks. And those are the kind of places where I can pull that off. We're going to be doing another rub, and I'm going to save the big highlight of our trip, but we're going to do a Royal Pub Crawl on the Link Promenade. Now, Bill, you and I have done the downtown version of this pub crawl. So this is something you buy at royalpubcrawl.com or you get it on Groupon, sometimes deeply discounted. And basically the way this works is you get to go to 5 bars. They have prepaid your drink, your tax, and your tip on 5 drinks, one at each bar. Now,
but tip your bartender anyway,
tip
right?
more anyway. Yeah, tip more, right? But everything, it's an all-inclusive package. Go ahead and tip more, but it's all-inclusive. And as you go at every stop, you unveil a card and a poker hand. And at the end of the night, the people with the best poker hands can win prizes. Downtown, it could be things like a pass to stadium swim, or it could be, a $30 or a $50 bar tab. I don't know what the prizes will be on the Link Promenade, but me and my 2 buddies, we're gonna hit that up. What did you think about that experience when we did it downtown?
So I was wrong, and I owe you an apology because I walked into it not excited. I'm like, this is going to be kind of dumb, but fine. Damn it, John, I'll do what you want to do. And I was wrong, right? Like I was objectively wrong.
Yeah, we had a great time.
It was a delightful experience. They were actually really good drinks. It was a good value. We had fun with our friends. I got to see some spots I wouldn't have otherwise. So you converted me, right? Like I am now a fan in spite of the fact that I'm years old. I am now a fan of the organized pub crawl.
Yeah, I think it's a good deal. And it's you're not going with a big group. It's you and whoever you bought tickets with going at your own pace. So you're not keeping up on one of these guided pub crawls. Now, I will say the fine print says the drinks are well drinks. Now, downtown, all 5 bars are at Derek Stevens Properties. 2 of them, Mega Bar and the Overhang Bar at Circa, Bar Prohibition over at Golden Gate, and then over at the D, it's Long Bar and Bar Canada. Even though the fine print says well drinks only, look, they're not going to pour you Pappy, but they actually were pouring mid-shelf drinks.
Like I got Maker's Mark level stuff pretty consistently.
Yeah.
It was a great deal.
So Derek Stevens bartenders kind of ignore that fine print, and they don't pour you the rot gut stuff in the well. They do you right, especially...
Which is part of why I'm so enthusiastic about tip the dang bartender.
Yeah. I mean, they get a gratuity from the service. Tip them. Even if it's $2 a drink.
Yeah, it's fine.
Look, you're still getting a deal because you can routinely get this thing on Groupon for like under $50 a person. On the Strip, you cannot get 5 drinks for under $10 from a bar. That doesn't happen. No. But you could do it with the pub crawl, so it's worth it if you're tipping $2, $5 a drink. You're still getting a bargain. I don't know if the bars on the Link Promenade are going to be as generous. So I have a feeling here it probably will be sticking with the well. I know I bought a previous promotion. One of the bars at the Promenade that they stop you at is the American Bar, which specializes in canned beer, thus the name. They used to do on Groupon I think it was a hour long or some amount of time you got a wristband and you could drink all you wanted for free.
Ooh, remind me to tell you about Juarez in 1997, but not when we're
not recording. When we're on the air. But when I did that promotion with my wife several years ago, and there's a story there of me getting thrown out for being a little overly enthusiastic during karaoke. But they were very strict about you get well liquor or you get PBR. Like that was in the fine print on Groupon, and they stuck to that. I have a feeling at the Link with this, it'll be the same deal. I expect that we're going to get well drinks. That's okay. It's not like any of the well liquors at the service bars on the Strip are just awful. It's not generic vodka. Slightly better than McCormick. Don't expect Grey Goose, but it'll be fine. But I do expect to have a good time with this. Apparently we hit It's Sugar, American Bar and Grill, and 3 other places. I don't have the list in front of me, but we'll report back on that. The highlight of our trip, one of my buddies kind of dabbled in filmmaking when he was younger. So he bought tickets for us to go to the Sphere and see Postcards from Earth. And I expect it to be a little bit of a preachy documentary, and we don't do politics on the channel. That said, the visuals are supposed to be stunning, and I cannot wait for Monday afternoon to go check out this film and the experience at the Sphere, and I will do my best to put together some kind of video on that for the channel.
Awesome. Well, John, is that it for this week?
I believe that wraps us up. That's it for us for the next 2 weeks, unless we get ambitious and record an episode while we're in Las Vegas. But until then, Bill, where can they get more of us on the internet?
You can find us at Dine Drink Travel on Instagram, on X, or Twitter, or whatever Elon is calling it now, on Facebook and on Threads. You can also find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas and at Dine Drink Travel.
By the way, let us know, because we have not set up on TikTok. Would you want us on TikTok? Do you want short format videos? Would you like it if we did those quick hits? Let us know, because we might do it, but not if you don't ask for it. And of course, you could find me on Twitter, X, whatever it is, as at Dine Drink John. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share with your Vegas loving friends. And until the next episode, happy travels.